Greetings everyone, my name is Raziel and today we are looking at Atesh Tarsa. Tarsa, formerly an Orphans of War warlord, has been added back into standard mode as part of the Shattered Legions, a faction that is best known for how overtuned their warlords are, especially Shadrach Medusan. But Tarsa is also not to be underestimated. Not just is he able to generate astartes for 1 energy from 3 different card pools, he also gains Survivor 1 every time you play a tactic. Both of these things combined make him a very good candidate for a control deck. Not just does Tarsa benefit from all the control tactics by gaining loads of Survivor, dragging the game far into the late game also means he will be able to utilize every astartes he is able to generate. Even some of the worst troops in the card pool will therefore still yield noticeable value, given you can just start throwing bodies at your opponent eventually and force them to deal with them. Obviously, this strategy still has a price. Very often, Tarsa fails to establish a truly threatening board early on, since he generally prefers to play the long game. This leaves you vulnerable to combo decks like Blessing of the Four Cypher or Salamander, as well as decks centered heavily around a mission as their primary win con. These decks are the weakest early on in the game and can oftentimes outscale you at the start of the late game due to their explosiveness. Still, if you can make the game last long enough, you should usually come out on top. This is the list. Being a control deck, we are using multiple cards whose primary focus is simply getting rid of troops on the enemy board. The most obvious example of this are the multiple sources of AoE damage. Not just are we using Shadowkin to deal 2 damage to all enemies for 5 energy, but we are also using Unleash the Storm and Exhaust Squad to apply additional pressure on the enemy board. Cards like Fracta Edificium and Sustained Fusillade are a means of dealing with singular troops, the latter especially valuable given the Shattered Legions have no actual heart removal in their arsenal. Because of this, we are also running 2 copies of Infiltration Mission to disable threatening units. This is generally enough, since we can just throw some bodies at the troop to remove it, the one thing Tarsa has no short supply of. But board control is not limited to our tactics. Troops like Legionary Lashar and the Sanctifier are great at dealing with mid and early game troops, while Orla's Command and the Fire Drake Isar ensure that they are protected from enemy influence. One final thing to note is that for a control deck we are not really running a lot of late game, the only card being drop side survivors. And indeed, the deck is lacking late game. That is where Tarsa comes into play. His primary task is to generate the late game with his cheap ability. Oftentimes we do not need to use all of our energy to clear an enemy board, or maybe our opponent isn't really doing a whole lot. In these scenarios, Tarsa can get to create powerful late game bodies, ideally with a trait like Survivor, Frontline or Stealth, which we can start to deploy once we have harrowed our opponent enough with our constant barrage of anti-troop cards. You can compare Tarsa very well to the old Nerric Dragor of the Iron Warriors. The concept of these warlords is basically the same. Have a deck that handles the early and mid game and use your cheap warlord ability to get access to late game troops, while Survivor ensures you are getting there. Where Narek generated random vehicles, however, Tarsa has not just the luxury of choosing what he generates, he also has access to multiple other factions' card pools in doing so, which makes him basically Narek 2.0. Overall, this is a very fun control deck that at times feels a bit like playing Event. Throw random troops at your opponent that you usually don't really see, and be surprised at how many problems they can cause. That concludes the breakdown of the deck and the strategy. If you want to read more, I recommend checking out the deck paste in the description. That was it from me. Enjoy the games.
This is the day.